Week 8 is in the books. Caleb Johnson, how are you, sir?
Doing well.
It's an exciting, again, week of basketball. Let's start right from the top. Pistons 68, Grizzlies 61. For the first time ever, we finally got
Double OT.
Double OT. We've had lots of overtime games.
Yeah.
The season started with 2 overtime games. You guys played them both in games 6 and 7 of the season. Never could get to that double overtime. We finally got it. It's actually remarkable. We only play the 2-minute period in the regular season with no additional timeouts. I mean, you're on a schedule. Obviously, in the playoffs, you get the 5 minutes, full thing with additional timeouts and all that. So that's the purpose of it in the regular season, is just to stay on schedule. Yet, however many games we'd had, probably 6 to 8, we'd never gone to double overtime. Talk about this game and a huge win for the Pistons, who improved to 2-6, but played really well.
Yeah, I mean, first name that comes to mind is Capri also. I mean, that man was a machine down there in the second half. Basically, every time they needed a bucket, the Grizzlies played a zone, which I think I haven't seen much of that from them this year. Maybe I'm wrong. They didn't zone us or the Spurs last week. So, I mean, maybe it's new or it's a game plan they had, but...
Yeah, potentially with the 5, eventually 6 guys plays into that. It's hard when you don't have numbers. Your whole team, as you'll talk about in a minute, to sort of do what you want to with your game plan. But that's my theory on that.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah, which I think the Pistons are a hard team to zone, I think, because they do have the IQ, the bodies, the veteran presence. I think Coach AP really slowed the team down, got the ball in the middle, and Capri just sitting there in the middle. He got whatever he wanted. And so it was either Capri in the middle doing his thing or inside out to Mark. And he hit some big shots on the stretch. So, I mean, those 2 guys alone just carried them, and this is a big win, kind of a gut punch of a win for the Pistons, as they kind of needed something to kind of get some momentum going for the playoffs. I mean, it stinks for the Grizzlies. This was definitely a game that I'm sure they had circled as maybe a win. Hopefully to get them going in the standings a little bit. Not having their full roster, it doesn't help with that. The White brothers were still good, but not having Rich Kirk, their kind of third key guy, as you kind of call him, their X factor.
Absolutely,
I think probably hurt them a little bit offensively. But I mean, Walt Hudson played well. He had some big moments down late in the game. I thought he almost had that game winning shot. The end one ended up not getting a stop there, but still incredible game from Walt. And just the Grizzlies just cannot pull it out in double overtime.
Yeah, lots there. You're right. Rich Kirk is their X factor, and I'm not saying he's more important than the White brothers, but he gives you a different look. And while they both had a good game, 19 and 17 respectively, it's if you can match up with those 2 guys, I'll say they were limited. I mean, they both scored below their season average. So if you can limit them, contain them, whatever the word is, because you're not going to entirely stop them, that's maybe where the Grizzlies are a bit vulnerable.
Wow. And then look at the stats. Sorry to cut you off.
The
40 to 20. They doubled them, which when you're watching, you knew it was a favor for the Pistons, but I didn't realize they doubled them 20 to 40 in the boards. Both teams shot 3 of 17 from 3, which is kind of fascinating. But I mean that in a close game like that reebounding number is definitely going to put you over the top.
Yep. And what's unique here is the Pistons. I mean, again, this is no offense to the Heat, and they did a great job finding a way to win at the end last week. Pistons should have beaten the Heat, and they should have lost this game. The Grizzlies are up 3 there after Walt Hudson's and 1, and everybody in the building. I mean, never when you're down 3 do you not take a 3 there. And everybody still knew they were going to go to Capri Austin there, and the Grizzlies just let it happen.
And they fouled him too.
Exactly. Yep. I mean, okay, let him score uncontested is one thing, but how they didn't have 2 guys there or whatever. I mean, I think the game it happened, and Chris White being out was a killer.
Foul outs in the overtime periods hurt.
Yeah, and you'll talk about this, like I said, in your game against the Celtics. The Grizzlies defensively were not able to do what they wanted, and we don't know the Pistons guys as well as other people. This is, for most of them, basically all of them, their first time in the league. But overall, they've been probably one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the entire league. I mean, 3 of 17 on Sunday. Mark didn't have
Mark was 0 for 2.
Best game from the perimeter. 0 for 4. But they did pass the ball well enough. AP sort of facilitated things well enough. He had the 5 assists there. And they just, they found a way to do what they needed to do to break down the zone. But the one more thing I'll say about this, the Pistons were down 7 there in the second half. I thought their season was over in that moment. They were frustrated about some things that happened with the officiating. They were frustrated with each other about turnovers and bad shots and effort. I mean, I said it. I thought it was the boiling point. I thought like that was it for the Pistons. I thought they were going to fold. I thought guys were maybe never going to come back again. And for them to rebound from the tough loss last week when they should have won the game, to find a way to pull this out, I think it was a season-saving win for them. And again, talked with AP, the Pistons aren't going to suddenly, run the table and get the 3 seed.
No,
it doesn't work that way.
They're kind of too far out of the picture,
Yeah,
I think, right now. 3 weeks left.
They can't even have a winning record at this point, unless they were, I guess, in the end they could. Not in the regular season, but kudos to them, and it's probably what you're going to tell your team. Same with the Celtics. You try and build momentum at the end of the season because everybody makes the playoffs. So is it great to have a bye? Yes. You're always going to take a free entry into the next round, but it doesn't define your season. So if the Pistons end up, instead of being the 11, being the 10 or the 9, that could end up being a huge difference for them. So kudos to them. And again, the Grizzlies, who are off next week, they'll want Rich Kirk back, of course. Chris White filing out killed them and some of those role players, but it wasn't a bad loss.
No.
They didn't finish when they had a couple chances to win the game. It hurts when you have the ball at the end of regulation and overtime. It had a chance,
and one of them they didn't get a shot off.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah. So what an awesome battle of the blue teams it was. Battle of the green teams was great for the Celtics, not so much for you guys. The Celtics win 64-60. Another team, again, no offense, who's just been at the bottom in terms of shooting threes all year out of nowhere. They go 62% from 3, which I don't know that any team has done that all season. Maybe the Lakers in the first half against the Suns. 13 of 21. Like, where in the world does that come from?
Yeah.
And it was timely. It's bad luck for you guys. You guys also weren't able to pressure the ball like you wanted. You sort of sat back in a zone with only having 5 guys. It was just a rough week for you guys in terms of your roster. But credit to the Celtics for knocking down a bunch of shots. And, of course, first time all season, they finally have 4 guys scoring double figures, which has been our conversation. Can other guys step up and score? Roger Bray with 10 points, he was awesome, and then Aaron Carr was 5 of 6 from 3 and 16 points. So it was kind of the perfect storm. You guys weren't able to defend the way that you wanted, but then the Celtics knocked down basically every shot and every opportunity that they have. So Celtics pick up the win. They improved to 1-7. Talk about that game.
Yeah, got to give the Celtics credit because it was their best game of the season. They outplayed us and out-hustled us in every aspect of the game. The 3-point shooting is, it's something that I've kind of mentioned a little bit this year. Is we've kind of, our defense has been lacking for sure, but basketball is a make or miss league, and sometimes you get lucky and teams miss open shots, and sometimes you don't get lucky. And the Celtics, not a great 3-point shooting team historically, but they made 60% for 3. So that's just something that as a coach is a little frustrating. And then of course we our roster was a little bit hit or miss to this week with Alex being sick. Basically played 1 minute. Billy didn't want to play in this game because he had another league championship that night and ended up playing the last 25 minutes of the game maybe. Didn't warm up, didn't kind of get in the flow of things. So that was kind of an interesting wrench thrown into in the middle of the game. And then quite frankly, a lot of the guys who did show up, myself included, just played a poor game. We just didn't play very well, didn't shoot well, and that happens sometimes. And you got to live on. But credit the Celtics. I think hopefully we'll have a full roster moving forward. Maybe with some guys who haven't been there in a while will show up and hopefully give us a spark in some of these next couple of games. And I think. I still am fully confident that the Bucks and our squad can make a run at things, and I think we're still a dangerous team. We just seem to get everyone's best game of the season.
Yeah, if you look at the numbers, whether it's guys stepping up or you guys not being good enough defensively, only the Pistons have allowed more points per game. So obviously you want to find ways to limit teams and what they're doing offensively, but. Again, it's the same thing the Pistons and the Celtics are saying. Everybody makes the playoffs, and every game matters so much. Tough end of your season, though. You have the Nets, who are currently
number one,
and then the Spurs, who, we'll talk about that, out of nowhere now are in 3rd and could potentially climb all the way up to one of those top 2 seeds, depending how the season ends. Mm-hmm. And then the Pistons the final week, so who are playing a lot better. So not exactly the easiest end to your schedule, but certainly a lot in front of you. The 2:00 game was, again, this is crazy, the only double-digit win of the day. And this game was close basically till the final 7 minutes or whatever. Ironically, last week, the Nets won the only game that wasn't single digits. And I've never seen this. In back-to-back weeks, they win 65-52, which is just bizarre. Despite being down early in both games, they're actually down at the half in this game and then played a smothering second half where they scored 42 points in the second half to 25 from the Bulls. So one of their best halves of the season. It's been the same thing every week with the Nets. The Nets, and credit to Coach Chills, they're the most consistent team week in and week out. Their guys show up. They play hard. They play unselfish. Everybody plays. They rotate for each other. I mean, there's certain things that the Nets have just figured out, and they're doing better than other teams in the league, and that's why they're 7-1. I just think they're the most consistent team in the entire league. And then they have Martavius Laster, who is starting to flirt again with conversation for Player of the Year with how good he's been. Of course, the only game the Nets didn't win, Martavius wasn't there. It just feels like they would have won that game if he was there. So talk about what was a really good 42-25 second half there for the Nets.
This was one I mentioned on last week's podcast where I was potentially, this game, this outcome could have been a little closer than people thought, and I think the first half lived up to that hype. But I mentioned, a little bit ago, of teams not to zone. This is also one of those teams that struggle to zone. Hence, and if you look at the stats, the number I'm looking at right now, 19 assists.
It's insane,
which is outrageous. So the ball movement was fantastic. Martavis, I believe, I'm just trying to look here, he had 7 assists, so 23 points on top of 7 assists. Chills Wills had 6. Jared Harris had 1. Mook Lawrence had 3. So the ball movement was just incredible. I mean, it always is with the Nets. So you hate to play zone against some teams, and a team like the Nets can pick it apart with the best of them. It's kind of an interesting box score for the Bulls, as Benny had 13, Seth had 10, and then everyone else was kind of in that 8 to 9 to 6 range. So no real standout performance from them. You would have hoped for more from Bobby in a big game like this. You would hope for more from Nick Crow, which again, I don't know if the Bulls utilize him maybe to the best of their ability. He comes out and he scores a couple easy baskets early on. He only has 5 shot attempts. I think he's one of their more underrated players. A guy who should get more touches on the block, I think, just because he's so big and strong. I don't know. Maybe I'm just seeing something that they're not. But, yeah, I mean, Laster is awesome. Sammy Hines, played great. I mean, I think there was some drawing going on in the first half that kind of sparked him a little bit, which is funny because there are certain teams and players you want to talk trash to, and there are probably certain players you don't want to. I think the Nets are probably one of those teams. They take those things personally. Mook and Sammy do. So, so Nets played great. Awesome win for them. And then, Bulls kind of in that middle range with us and the Heat and the Warriors kind of in the middle of the pack.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's amazing to me that the Bulls can have the size advantage that they did against the Nets and really not do much with it. They were out-rebounded by the Nets, and we know how the Nets play. Mook Lawrence in the running for Defensive Player of the Year with what he's been doing. Yeah. I mean, but the Nets just they kind of looked on the market, weren't able to add a big to their team, and it just hasn't mattered. Could it matter on Championship Sunday? Yes, it probably will. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, everybody plays a little bit bigger than they are, and the way Chills rebounds, Mook,
Sammy had 9.
And Maurice. I mean, they don't even care that they don't have a big man out there. And so if I'm the Bulls, you can't get out-rebounded in a game like this. The Nets, how tall is Sammy? I don't know. I mean, they don't
6'2", 6'3".
Yeah, maybe, they don't have a 6'8". They don't have TJ Wicks this year. They don't have a 6'9" guy. They don't have that would be interesting if TJ was playing with them. But it's surprising the Bulls aren't rebounding better in a game like this, but credit to the Nets, and that's why they're 7-1. Mm-hmm. The Nets, as much as any team, they have a game plan every week. They stick to it, and so far they really haven't been phased. So, I mean, I know you guys play them next week. That'll be quite the challenge, but the Nets are still in that. I mean, the Nets have basically clinched, same with the Lakers, a first-round bye, unless they just utterly collapse. But just amazing starts to them, and I think the Nets continue to impress every week with their consistency.
Yeah.
3:00 game.
Game of the week.
It was game of the week, a rematch of last year's championship game. And you and I were both surprised by the outcome of this game. It's not that we didn't believe in the Spurs going into the game or that at any point this season we wrote them off. Just with Chris Green gone and with Trey Johnson not there, and the Suns, what I would say is basically their 7 guys.
Yeah, the full squad.
I mean, they've only had Jared Johnson once this year, so we wouldn't necessarily say that he's in that role unless something changes. But I just didn't think the Spurs would have enough. And for them to shoot, you asked if that number was right, and it is. For them to shoot...
No, Octavius' number.
Okay, yeah, for them to shoot...
I think he had 7.
For them to shoot as well as they did from 3 is pretty remarkable.
Both teams.
Close, almost 50%. Ben goes 3 for 5. Dennis goes 2 for 5. Dustin goes 3 for 4. I mean, they were just fantastic from 3. So, first talk about how the Spurs impressed, and then we want to break down what was just a ridiculous almost comeback from Vashon and the Suns there at the end.
Yeah, so I think Dennis and Dennis and Ben kind of stirred the pot early on, kind of got the offense going a little bit, and then when the bench came in, Octavius Davis was fantastic. KT Bobo, those 2 guys were huge for them. The Spurs had a really hard time guarding them in the half court. Octavius was just all over the place, hitting threes. He's listed for 7 in the stat sheet. I don't believe he had 7 because he only has 18 points. So my guess is he probably had 4 threes with a couple layups and putbacks himself. So he was awesome. We kind of mentioned on the call that Ben Green was going to be a huge piece for them that day, and he was immediate off the start, hitting some layups, some threes. So they were fantastic early on, but it was a weird game altogether because the Spurs got down 20 at one point. They were kind of bickering with each other, calling each other out, in a good competitive way, challenging each other's competitiveness and. So Octavius had 3 threes. So
yeah, our mistake. We'll fix that. By the time you guys hear this, that'll be right online.
Yes, but
he was 7 from the field. He only hit 3 3-pointers. So sorry about that.
No, yeah, but and then all of a sudden they woke up. The Suns did. I one thing I do love about Ryan as a captain and a coach, he never quits. They were down 20 points with 6 minutes to go. And he was.
It was what? It was like a 20-0 run. I mean, it was. Shocking.
He was willing his guys to pick up full court, to start pressuring, to not quit on the game. And sure enough, it was like a one possession game at one point. I don't think they never had the ball late in the game to tie it or take the lead, but it was always close in that last minute because they didn't quit because the effort from him and his brother Jay, Vashon turned it on, but. So kudos to those guys for not quitting because a lot of teams in the league we've seen in the years past will just quit. You're down 20.
Officials call the game because people
you start chucking up
threes
and technical fouls are had, but the Suns didn't quit. Just huge win for the Spurs, kind of shorthanded without 2 of their key guys. So awesome win. Suns still have a lot to play for. I know you love the Suns as maybe one of your top 2 or 3 favorites, but big win for the Spurs.
Yeah, it absolutely was. So if we fix those inflated numbers that. Let's see. Do some math on the spot. So they hit 12
threes.
12 threes.
Still an impressive number.
Out of, I believe it's 22, which is, again, still
over 50%.
Over 50%. So pretty impressive. I didn't realize the Suns took as many threes as they did. Part of that is because they were down. They're disappointed. They thought they were going to win this game. I thought they were going to win this game. They probably got away from their identity a little too much.
Yeah.
And the Suns are an inside-out team. And I'm not saying they can't shoot the 3. They shoot the 3 very well. Ask Jameer and Vashon and all these guys. Even Phil's knocking down threes. Ryan's shooting better from 3. Jay's, an all-time shooter. But they didn't throw the ball inside like they typically do. Mm-hmm. And I believe, like we said, the Spurs played a little bit of zone, and so they were willing to give up some threes. And for them to hit 17 threes is just insane. And
still lose.
And to lose. So now, Vashon had 4 in a row there at the end when they were down big.
Yeah.
But this was a surprising game, but Ben Green stepped up. The Spurs with Ben there, with Dennis at this level, with Dustin playing well. John looks like he's doing better. And then, of course, KT and Octavius, their 2 additions, they combined for 35 points. Mm-hmm. They don't win that game without those 2 guys. So get Chris back, get Trey back. all of a sudden the Spurs remind you who they are and why they've, had the success that they've had in the league. So the Spurs improved to 5-3. The Suns fall to 4-4. We haven't always, I guess, been saying the records here. The Bulls fell to 3-5. I mentioned the Nets were 7-1. So these two teams are. The Spurs went from losing and falling to whatever that could have been 6th or 7th to actually. Spurs are in sole possession of third place after today.
Insane.
Which is how big that game was.
Especially with the Rockets forfeit. That kind of really aided them.
That was huge. So the Warriors are 4-4. The Rockets are 4-3. It's just a cluster of teams in there. So a lot still at play. The Spurs could still finish 5-6 and, not even be a top 8 seed. They could win out and potentially get up to the number 1 seed. There's a lot of things there. We'll talk about it. Final game of the day, because of that forfeit, was the Lakers over the Heat. And the Heat just never got a rhythm offensively. Despite out-rebounding the Lakers, they were 4 out of 22 from 3. Only 2 guys scoring double figures, and they barely do it. The Lakers were just better throughout the entirety of the game. Lakers improved to 7-1. The Heat fall to 3-5. Talk about not a dominating performance, but what was a comfortable game for the Lakers. They were up by 10 pretty much the whole game.
Yeah.
Because they got out to that 10-1 start.
It was kind of a weird feel for the game because I feel like, after the start of the game was pretty much within 6 to 12 points the rest of the game. The Heat could never get over that hump. I mentioned it on the broadcast. It's just like they never, went on a big enough run or hit two threes in a row to kind of make things interesting. The Lakers, kind of their veteran presence, LJ kind of took things into his own hands in the second half, hit some big shots. He finished with 21, so a big game from LJ. But it was just kind of like a business-like win for the Lakers. Just kind of took care of business, never made things interesting. Well, the end of the game was pretty interesting. Maybe you'll get to that in a second with how things ended. But the Heat out-rebounded them. Heat always get after defensively. Only 8 turnovers for the Lakers, which I think is a pretty big number. That turnover number is always big when you're looking at playing against the Heat, because if you can force 15 or more, if the Heat, they're always going to be in that game. But Lakers take care of the ball. Just a solid average performance, a balanced performance. From the Lakers, and the Heat just really couldn't get someone to step up. Really just kind of a strange year for Terrell. Hasn't had as many 25, 30-point performances like he has in the past.
He did the first 3 or 4 weeks,
which wills them to some wins sometimes, but
he hasn't
quite
since
this year.
He hasn't sent those first 3 or 4 weeks there. CJ Link was just not himself. He was 1 for 8, and that killed them. I think business-like is a good way to describe the Lakers' performance. I am curious if they'll have Brian against the Spurs next week.
They would kind of need him.
I think they are going to need him, but if they don't, well, things continue on. LJ's, he's been the on-court leader for them, and guys are really looking up to him, and we're looking up to him. He's improved a lot in the last season, and he's in the running for certainly a first-team All-League spot. Heat 3-5, Lakers 7-1. We'll just hit the games here for next week. There's only 3 weeks left to go, which is pretty crazy. There's, one matchup on here that we have circled. It's Spurs and Lakers, which is a lock for game of the week.
Yep.
Every other matchup is actually a team with a winning record against a team with a losing record. Technically, the Rockets and Suns could. The Suns don't have a losing record; they are 4-4. So, I should say the Spurs and Lakers is the only matchup of 2 teams with a winning record. So, on paper, looking at the records, it feels like, 3 of those first 4 games, there's kind of a big favorite in there. But you and I aren't so sure about that. So Celtics play the Heat. This is a rematch of last year's quarterfinal matchup. Now, again, Billy's no longer with the Celtics, but they do have Antonio Phillips this year, and they've finally had some guys step up on Sunday. The Heat are always a mystery. They're definitely the more athletic team, and I think they'll dominate on the glass. What would the Celtics have to do to keep their momentum going and beat the Heat, aside from shooting a ridiculous percentage from 3 again?
I think that, first off, that would really help, having Aaron Carter and Phillips hitting some threes. But the number, the thing I'm going to mention is what I just said in the last game is the turnover number. Is Celtics have really struggled with turnovers. For our team's sake, I wish we could have played more man-to-man because they do struggle, handling the ball sometimes with pressure. The Heat are the team that pressure the ball the most. They pick up full court. I'm not giving Trey Anthony a game plan or anything like that, but that is one thing that the Celtics do struggle with is handling the ball. So I would imagine that that could be a huge factor, a huge number. Maybe it's 15 to 16 turnovers if the Celtics are under that number. I like their chances, to keeping it close or winning the game. But if it's not, then we could see a big Heat win. We're just looking at last year's numbers,
19 turnovers when they played.
So yeah, I mean, I'm liking that 15 number. They've been under it. I think the last few games the Celtics have, but it is cause for concern when you're playing against a team that thrives off of the fast break and turnovers.
Yeah, if the Celtics don't take care of the ball, forget it. The Heat are going to run right through them. But the Celtics also they lost by 8 points last year, and they had 19 turnovers. So it's a matchup that the Celtics can certainly come out on top in, but they have to take care of the ball. And if the Heat are on their game with their pressure and getting the turnovers and running in transition and all that, I think they're definitely going to have the edge. So the Heat are one of 3 teams that are 3-5, and I think we're just going to really see if any of those teams, the Bulls 3-5, the Bucks 3-5, if any of those teams can make a late season push here. The Heat still have some tough games left on their schedule. They play the Suns and the Rockets still, so probably hard to see either any of those teams winning out or anything like that. But it's still in front of them. So the Heat, although it feels like they're a lot further back than they are, they do have a chance to sort of make a move there. Warriors and the Pistons at 1:00. The Warriors are 4-4. The Pistons are 2-6. This all comes down to who the Pistons have.
Yep.
With their full team, they're one of the few teams that has the size to match up with the Warriors. I would anticipate a potentially lower scoring game.
Yep.
2 teams that play slower and want to control the tempo. And then, do the Pistons have an answer for Tyrese Mosley? I guess we'll find out. What do you think about this game?
Yeah, I think the first thing is if the Pistons can have the roster they had last week, this could be an awesome game. The second thing is I'm going to give you a name, John.
Here it is.
Quan Shaw.
There it is.
I'm watching for a big Quan Shaw performance. I've been saying it kind of all year. We're due for a big game from Quan. He's had some good games, but Quan, if you're listening to this, I'm confident that you're about to go off because he's too good of a player to have some lower number games, and I think this matchup that Warriors Pistons could be a really good one for him to go off. So watch for Quan have a big game. Obviously, Latrell and Tyree are always gonna kind of bring their A game, but I think it's time for Quan to show up and kind of be that all league player we know he is. So watch for a good Quan game, and then if the Pistons have the roster they did against the Grizzlies, it's going to be an awesome game. So it should be 2 top level teams with some high level talent.
No doubt about that. Pistons kind of have a chance here to make some noise. Same spot the Heat are in, same spot you guys are in, and the Bulls. You're one good win streak away from shooting up the standings a bit and having some momentum. This is a good time of the year to be playing your best basketball. Spurs of the Lakers. This is a blockbuster. It's fun when you get a matchup like this, and it's no disrespect to the other teams in the league, but there's just a lot on the line here when you have a 7-1 team in the Lakers trying to, still in the running for the number 1 overall seed. Lakers are one of the few teams that can say they've beaten the Spurs in years past. They did it back when LJ was with them, Tom Brooks. There was the very first game in the fall 21 season. K-Boss's first ever game with the Spurs. It was a long time ago. If you remember, we had an issue with the old shirt supplier we used to use. We didn't have shirts, so
black and white.
It was black and white, and it was it was interesting to say the least. But there's a lot we could break down. I'm excited to see LJ Harris and Dennis Koger match up. I'm stealing your thunder here. No. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Even KT Bobo against Andre Robertson Jr. There's so many individual matchups that I like in this one. What are your thoughts on Spurs and Lakers? And I'll talk a little bit about the implications of the game.
Yeah, I mean, you could go down the roster, kind of like you said, and go player by player. And I think the one that's hard to ignore is LJ and Dennis, 2 guys who are playing at an absolutely incredible level right now. 2 guys who, based on what we've seen so far from the league, are pretty good candidates for at the very least second team all league, probably first team all league candidates. I think another kind of interesting one that two players from both teams is going to be Chris Green and Tone Brooks, both guys who are capable scorers, both guys who like the big moments, like the big games. So I think whichever one of those two guys has an outbreak of a game could really give their team the edge. And then if Brian Hernandez is there, he's another kind of all-league kind of guy who could add 20 points at any given point. So those are some of the big name guys, but that LJ versus Dennis matchup is going to be awesome.
Yeah, you never say this with the Lakers, but they're going to have to hit some threes to stick with the Spurs. We've seen different versions of the Spurs this year where at times it was like, no, they're not going to be able to beat a team like the Lakers. Mm-hmm. And then what we saw them do on, this past week against the Suns, it's like, okay, can the Lakers keep up with the Spurs? What I think that means is these are two really good teams that are still finding their game a little bit. And, I mean, ultimately, whoever plays better obviously is going to win. But these are two championship contenders that I think both have a chance to win the entire thing. That's what they're both thinking. It's a bigger game, in my opinion, for the Spurs because they're 5-3. So here's what the Spurs situation is. The Spurs play the 7-1 Lakers, the 3-5 Bucks, and then the 7-1 Nets. So the Spurs, if they win out, they'll be 8-3. They'll for sure be the number 3 seed or better. The Spurs now have an outside chance. If the odds makers were making odds, I would say I would put it at probably 15% chance at the number 1 overall seed. If they beat both the Lakers and the Nets, theoretically, and went out, they'd be 8-3. If those other two teams both went out, of course, they'd be 9-2.
Yeah.
But the Spurs now, they still have the chance to have the head-to-head tiebreaker over both of those teams. So if either of those teams slips up, and the Spurs, of course, went out, they'll surpass them. So the Spurs are 5-3. They might lose to both those teams. They might finish 6-5, and have to win 2 games just to make the Final Four. If they play like they did this past week, they have a chance, again, to get all the way up to certainly a top 3 seed or if not better. But if you're the Lakers, this is a chance to probably redeem what was not their best performance against the Nets. And so they're going to be looking forward to that as well. So big game. We'll be there for it. We're excited.
Yep.
Gonna be a good one. I think these are two teams that would both be disappointed if they weren't playing on Championship Sunday. So
yes, I can't imagine they won't be unless something crazy happens.
Yep. Bucks and Nets at 3:30. So this is the other 7-1 team. Mm-hmm. You guys, should have a much fuller roster than you did against the Celtics. How do you score the ball against the Nets? They've been the best defensive team by far in the K1 League.
Yeah, I think this is going to be an interesting game because I think when we are at our best, we also kind of tend to play slow. We have some bigs on our squad that are really good in the post and like to play a half-court game. So I think this could be a very low-scoring game. I hope our defense shows up. And we really missed Jaquan Boxley. So Jaquan, for listening to this, I hope your grandma's okay and she's hopefully recovering soon and well, and you can be back with us this week. But he was obviously a big key missing for us. So I think defensively he can really add some energy for us, maybe to help guard Martavis and help guard Sammy out there. But yeah, this should be a low-scoring game. Hopefully we can get a full roster with some guys, some key guys who haven't been here for a couple weeks, and Billy with his other league wrapping up is going to be focused all in on the Bucks and the K1 League from here on out. So
yeah, exciting for you guys.
I'm hoping we get his best performance, which I feel like we haven't seen since the Bulls game. At least a full Billy Baptist performance. So and I know Mook Lawrence he's gonna be licking his chops. I'm sure Mook's gonna be listening to this and he's gonna be dialed in on figuring out how to stop Billy Baptist this week, and should be an awesome one-on-one match between those two guys. Yeah,
without looking at everything, Mooks feels to me like a early favorite for Defensive Player of the Year with some of the jobs that he's done defensively. But this is a big one. Yeah, Martavius Laster. It's funny. Some guys on the Nets on our Facebook post last week feel like Puda, as he goes by, has been robbed a couple times of Player of the Week awards. So I want to go on record and say we have nothing against you, Puda. If anything, you were a vote or two away from winning Player of the Year last year. Kavas was just a little bit better. Mm-hmm. We know how good you are. You don't have to prove yourself to me. There's just been a couple guys that were just a little bit better each week, and that's why they were given the award. Might even happen again this week with Capri, even though Puda had 23-7. So if you're using that as motivation, good for you. Keep doing that. But none of us are trying to spite you.
No.
So I feel like we need to say that.
If you're an A+ California.
If anything, I think Puda, you're one of the most valuable guards in the entire league. You showed that last year, and you're showing it again this year. You guys haven't lost a game yet when you've been there. So I don't even know if Puda listens to this. I don't know if anyone on the Nets listens to this. I don't know who listens to this. Somebody does.
I mean, we get viewers, though, and if you are listening to this, we really appreciate your viewership.
Thank you for mentioning that. Yes.
Come out to K1 on Sundays and watch in person if you don't. But
can't imagine you would listen to this and then not come unless we're just that bad. But Nets have everything in front of them. They're 7-1.
Yep.
Obviously, 10-1. It is possible that them and the Lakers could still both finish 10-1. They both have tough schedules left. The Nets also play the Grizzlies, who are currently in the 5 spot with their loss on Sunday, and then the Nets finish the season with the Spurs. So not exactly an easy end of the schedule for them. But, the Nets do still control their own destiny and are at the moment would be your number 1 seed if the season ended today.
Last 2 games?
Yeah, last 2 games. Rockets, this is by far their biggest week of the year. So Rockets, if I have this right, didn't play 2 weeks ago and then didn't play this week because of a forfeit.
Yeah.
Rockets haven't played basketball in a while. The Rockets have your scoring leader, Antonio Marshall. He's averaging 28.8 points per game. The questions for them, kind of similar to the Pistons, have been that they've got a lot of guys in their team, and they've got some good players that aren't there every week.
Yep.
Hunter Jacobs, Tanner Ribby. I mean, Tanner Ribby showed up once. He scores 20 points against you guys. We haven't seen him since. Story of your season.
Yeah.
So the Rockets are 4-3, which has them right in the middle of everything. And a good or a bad Sunday probably determines the Rockets' postseason fate here. So they take on the Bulls, who at the moment they're 1 game up on the standings, and then when they play the Suns, they'll either be tied with or 1 game up on in the standings. They play 2 teams that are far better when it comes to interior play, rebounding, size, a lot more depth. Antonio Marshall at times does not seem human, but what are the Rockets going to have to do to pull off either of these games? Because, again, it doesn't matter who the Rockets have. They're not going to be favorites on the interior.
No.
The other teams are going to have the edge when it comes to rebounding, but obviously the Rockets like to control pace, run things through tone, and they've been one of the more efficient teams on offense. If I remember correctly, they have the fewest turnovers in the league.
Wouldn't surprise
offensively,
me. Yeah,
which wouldn't surprise you. Anyway, Caleb, big Sunday for the Rockets against the Bulls and the Suns.
Definitely. I think we kind of always say this from week in, week out, but who's going to show up for the Rockets is the big key. I mean, if they can get 7 or 8 guys there, if they can get Hunter, this Tanner Ribby, I'm not sure where Harry's at in this whole process with his injury and also driving distance. So if they can get some of those guys back, have 8 guys, have Alex Orson there, they can easily split 1-1, and they could go 2-0. I think the Bulls game is going to be fascinating because I don't know if the Bulls have zoned a ton all this year, but they did zone the Rockets or the Nets this week. My Bucks team saw from experience that zoning the Rockets can be challenging when they have their full roster there because they just have shooters on shooters on shooters on top of the best point guard in the league, arguably, Antonio Marshall, who is a facilitator, knows where people need to go in the zone. And so if they end up doing that zone again, it could be a very interesting matchup between a smart, high IQ guard with shooters and then their size and kind of physicality of the Bulls. So they didn't really get a full glimpse of our team full go. We have a lot of size and they kind of handle us pretty well. But the Bulls are also kind of a different animal with Nick and Seth and Bobby. Those 3 guys alone are huge. So that's going to be an interesting contrast in that first game. And then the second game is just going to be, I think, a really fun one again. If the Rockets have a full roster,
it'd be fun to see with Sean and
Suns
Tone.
Are going to be desperate for not desperate, but really antsy for a win after that loss against the Spurs. We kind of thought they were going to be 5-3 this week. They want to get that bye if they can get it with these last 3 weeks. Potentially a push
more
for
than
7
any team the Suns want to buy. Yes.
for 7-4, and it sounds like they might be getting some guys back. I'm not sure what their roster will look like with Vashon and some other guys in the roster showing, but.
Yeah, maybe a boost from Jared. It's we don't know, but
yeah, but I mean, it should be a fantastic game between potentially the MVP of this year and the MVP of last year. So some high-powered offense. Gonna be fun to see Tone and Vashon battle it out to the premier guards. So gonna be an awesome game. I think.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah, the Suns probably more than anybody they want a first round bye, just with where they're coming from, and it's a 4-hour wait on that first day. So the Suns play the Rockets, the Heat, and they finish up with the Warriors. I think I said this on air yesterday. It feels to me like the Suns and Warriors matchup in Week 11. It's a 3:00 game if you care enough to put it on your calendar. It feels like that could potentially come down to a game that's almost, playing for a bye. If the Warriors and Suns are both 6-4, I would think that the winner of that game would end up getting a bye.
Yeah,
depending
probably
on
that 4 seed. Yeah.
Yeah, depending on how other things go. Because if the Spurs are able to, even if the Spurs split with the Nets and Lakers, the Spurs are going to be able to hang on to a bye there. 7 seems like the magic number at this point, and there's several teams that can still get there. The Warriors can still get there. The Grizzlies could still get there. The Rockets could still get there. The Suns could still get there. But probably, we'll know where the Rockets are at after this week because they play both the Bulls and the Suns. But if the Suns do win this game and the Warriors beat the Pistons, it feels like that could potentially be the winner take bye game.
Winner take bye.
Winner take bye. So we'll see. Excited to see Tone go up against Benito Munoz and then Vashon Sims. So their third and final doubleheader of the day. I urge you, if you're a Rockets member, to show up because they play both doubleheaders with 6 guys, and it's not fun.
No,
it's not fun to play one game with 6 guys. So we'll see what that looks like. But what a great week of basketball. In our last 2 weeks, outside of the Nets, we haven't had any games finish outside of single digits, and the Nets took care of business in the second half the last 2 weeks to win identical 65-52 games. So maybe it really is the Nets season. But a lot of great games, a lot of parity, which has made it fun to play, fun to coach, fun to do our podcast. So appreciate you guys joining us, Caleb. Good job as always.
Yeah.
Look forward to week 9, if you can believe it, Sunday, October the 16th. The 23rd will be week 10. We're off on the 30th and then back at you for 3 Sundays in November. The 13th is our Mega Mayhem playoff day, and then the 20th. Mega Mayhem. It's whatever the November equivalent of March Madness is. If you can think
You're not going to want to miss that game, day.
That's right. If you can think of a word that starts with an N to pair with November, that is a synonym for madness, we'll share it. Send us, if you're listening to this, send that to us. And
Please
maybe
do.
We'll give you a shout out if you're the winner of that in next week's podcast.
Maybe even some K1 merch, John. I don't know.
We might have some merch on hand for that. We might be able to hook you up. So send us your suggestions. But Mega Mayhem Playoff Day is, if you can believe it, less than a month away. So we'll be back with you guys same time next week, starting with the Celtics and the Heat on the 16th. Thanks, guys, for joining us. We will see you all soon.
See ya.